All-you-can-eat buffet workers, what are your horror stories? Story 1. I was not a buffet worker, but just a witness. We were waiting in line for the soft-serve machine at Golden Corral. The woman in front of us gets up to the machine and awkwardly jerks the handle around in an attempt to get at the sweet, sweet ice cream within. She's pushing, pulling, twisting, doing literally everything but turning it to the right, which would have dispensed the ice cream. She's really perplexed by this. So, she takes the next logical step, of course, which is to wrap her lips around the spout, form a seal on it with her mouth, and start trying to suck it right out of the tap. One of the workers sees this and looks on in disgust before he unplugs the machine. On the way out, we see that he put an out-of-order sign on it, so, thankfully, they didn't keep serving it after that whole incident. Before we continue, do us a quick favor, smash that like button and subscribe to support our channel. Story 2. I managed a buffet in a casino in Reno for a few months. We had this family come in, mom, dad, and 2 little kids. I got called over to the table because the mom had thrown up on her plate table and wanted us to take it away and clean it up. I asked if she was okay, and she said she always throws up when she eats cheese. She had gotten herself an enchilada, as it was Mexican theme night. What the heck, lady? Enchiladas pretty much always have cheese. I told her I would have to call a janitor, because none of my staff was trained to handle biohazards. She didn't understand why I couldn't just take it. The janitor came in and couldn't clean up because she refused to move from the table. So the janitor left. She calls me back over and starts yelling at me. Dad starts yelling too. Apparently she wanted to keep eating after throwing up, which I thought was really gross. I had them sit at another table so they could all keep eating. Janitorial came back and cleaned the other table. Finally, they go to leave and decide to make a huge scene in front of the whole restaurant and demand their money back. I refuse. Dad gets in my face and starts shouting that I'm just a racist white wuss and his wife makes loads more money than I do. I called security and they stormed out, pulling pictures off the wall and shattering them on the floor. And Dad also picked up a vase and broke it. The 2 kids are running around and banging on the walls. Security finally shows up after they run off. I have to do a report, and they were put on the 86 list. I frigging hate people. Story 3. I used to work as a server at a Chinese buffet, and a few unforgettable moments come to mind instantly. One time, a middle-aged woman puked all over her table, then blamed it on giving herself the wrong insulin dose, though the 4 heaping plates of food she just annihilated probably didn't help. She was super apologetic and left me a $1 tip. Another time, I tried clearing a dirty plate drenched in hibachi sauce and grease, only for the guy to stop me mid-reach, grin, and say, "That's the best part," before drinking it like it was leftover cereal milk. A young mom once chewed me out because her infant threw up after eating the crab meat and mozzarella from the buffet. Her baby wasn't even a year old. I'm no expert, but I'm pretty sure fake crab and melted cheese aren't on the pediatrician-approved list. And the wildest day? ICE raided us one morning right before opening. Half the kitchen staff and one of our managers were deported. The entire back of the house was basically split between Chinese and Latin American workers. It was a chaotic job, to say the least. Story 4. My parents owned an all-you-can-eat buffet, and I was there every day of my life from 4 to 14. My favorite horror story is when this couple came in to eat. They loved the crab legs, and every time my mom put some out, they took it all. Also, just a reminder, crab legs are expensive, forget the other customers. They just took it and ate it all. So they've been there for maybe 2 hours now, and it's getting dark. They've eaten through at least a week's stock of crab legs, and my mom finally decides it's enough. She stops putting it out on the buffet and brings individual plates to the customers who wanted it but couldn't get any due to this couple. The couple is angry. They literally flipped the chairs at their table, flipped their plates, bowls, cups, etc., and completely trashed their area. Food was all over the floor, table, and chairs. Sticky soda was dripping onto the carpet. They left in a hurry, but someone caught their license plate. We called the cops, and I think they said they charged them with something. I can't remember the aftermath details clearly, because I was probably 8 or 9 years old. I just remember looking at the mess and feeling really angry that my sister and I had to clean it up with our mom. It was a family-run business, so we didn't have much help. Story 5. Not a buffet, but I worked at a pizza parlor that offered a lunch buffet of endless pizza. The lunch ran from 11 a.m. to 3 p.m. This gentleman came in, I think he was homeless. He serves up a sky-high plate of pizza, and he just goes to town. He stayed from the beginning to the very end to make sure he got his money's worth. Well, his body didn't appreciate being stuffed like a piñata of pizza. He got up and waddled fast to the bathroom, and the next thing I know, I'm being told he had poop trailing behind him to the bathroom, and inside the bathroom. I was informed by my boss about the incident. I told him I was just heading out for a break. I was not about to clean that up. Story 6. I wasn't an employee there but a customer. A long time ago, my mom and I picked up a friend of hers, and we went to a local Chinese food buffet. This place had a thing where you could get a pound of food for $5 in a takeout container instead of sitting and eating at the restaurant if you wanted. So that was our plan. The three of us were browsing around the buffet line with our takeout containers, adding what we wanted to them, and then I noticed my mom's friend doing something disgusting. He was eating a chicken wing, like right in front of the buffet line, hiding his face behind his takeout container, and then he took the chicken bone and put it back in the buffet tray. I walked over to my mom and told her what he was doing, and at first she thought I was joking. So she walked over towards him, and now he was standing there eating a slice of watermelon right off the buffet and then putting the rind back in the tray. So my mom is like, "What the heck are you doing?" And he's like, "Don't worry, I do this all the time. They never notice." So of course, both mom and I are panicking, worried that they're gonna call the cops or something because of this misfit. We basically pretended not to know him and continued to fill up our containers the right way. After a couple of minutes, one of the employees walks up to my mom and tells her that they noticed what the guy was doing, and they noticed that we were also uncomfortable about it and didn't intend to blame us. But they warned her that if she doesn't get him to pay for the food in his container and leave immediately, they'll be calling the police. So of course, mom tells him that we need to go now, and he just brushes it off like, "I don't care, they're not gonna do anything." Well, mom and I walked up to the front, paid for our containers, apologized, and walked out, and left him there. A minute later, you can see and hear him shouting with the staff. He throws his container on the ground, and food splatters everywhere. He storms out, shouting insults as he leaves, and of course gives them an "I'm never coming back," to which they reply, "You're not allowed in here anymore. We'll call the cops." So, we're standing out by the car, waiting for him. Of course, we yell at him for being a piece of crap. We get in the car, and the next thing you know, this jerk starts pulling chicken wings and Chinese donuts out of his freaking pockets and eating them. We dropped him off at home and never spoke to him again. Story 7. A woman came in with 2 of her kids and had a pretty regular meal. You pay when you leave our place, and she decided to sneak out with her younger daughter before paying, leaving her underage son alone at the table. We caught on pretty quickly and sent someone after her, who found her in her car in the parking garage, waiting for her son to come as well. She refused to come back in and pay, so we had to keep her son hostages until the police came to handle the situation. What some people will do to their kids, I swear. We also found out from her son that she stole one of the manager's key cards, and they would regularly come into the hotel and use the card to go swimming in the top floor pool. Smart, I'll give her that, but still. Story 8. Back in 2012 to 2013, I worked one of my first jobs cooking for a breakfast buffet at a restaurant. Most of our customers were elderly folks, especially on Sundays when they'd come straight from church, dressed in their Sunday best and full of entitlement. One old lady was absolutely convinced I was too young to be working there. I told her repeatedly that I was 17. But she kept insisting, "They're making you say that, aren't they? This is illegal, you know." Like, "Ma'am, what do you want me to do, age in front of you?" Another guy piled literally all of the bacon onto his plate, pointed to the empty tray and went, "Look at that." I said, "Okay, I'm looking. What am I supposed to see?" And he replied, "There's no bacon left. Aren't you going to refill it?" I played dumb and said, "That's weird, someone must have taken it all just now." And this man just could not connect the dots that it was him. There was also this lady who walked past the bacon tray, wrinkled her nose in disgust, and went, "Wow, it's 2013. Who even eats meat anymore?" Like, okay, thanks for the TED Talk. Then there was the woman who showed up 15 minutes after the buffet closed and freaked out at us for taking it down. We politely explained that the buffet closed 15 minutes ago and that the last call had already happened. Her response? That's okay, I'll just complain to your manager. I honestly wanted to say, great. He also knows the buffet closed 15 minutes ago. The same lady used to come in twice a week and complain every single time about how terrible the food and service were. Finally, one of our hostesses hit her with the golden line. If the service is so bad and the food is so terrible, why do you come here multiple times a week? Shut her right up. Story 9. I used to work in an all-you-can-eat buffet. I would usually be the one who cleaned up after people once closing hours passed. Essentially, I was the de facto janitor of the place. This one time, I had to clean the bathroom after the place closed. No problems in the female bathroom, but when I went into the male restroom, the image was burned into my retina instantly. An old man was lying on the floor, face down in a puddle of muck. Not just any sewage muck, but an opaque, black muck. It had the color of motor oil. It smelled awful too, like a mix of fecal matter and rotting durian. It certainly didn't help that the liquid wasn't just smeared all over the floor, but spread across the walls too. There were freaking handprints across the wall, presumably when the geezer was trying to stand himself up. I peered into the toilet, more of that brown liquid, along with chunks of corny poop. There's also this fluid in your digestion called chyme. It's basically the thing right before food turns into poop, the pulpy acidic liquid with partially digested food in it. I could see scraps of chicken breast and sauce mixed in there with the pulpy chyme. As for the old guy, well, it turns out he didn't merely faint, he actually died. I was in a room with a fresh, decomposing corpse in the stages of rigor mortis. He had his pants off. Presumably he pooped himself to death, but I don't know. The guy emptied himself like one of those cement mixers you'd see in a cartoon, except you just replace the cement with a liquid that embodies death itself. Needless to say, I, like him, emptied my digestive contents, just from the opposite end that he did. After that I quit. Screw that place, man. Story 10. The Golden Corral in the city where I went to college got shut down thanks to an employee. He found it odd that they made a busboy sign a non-disclosure form to work there. He found out it was because they were breaking just about every health and safety rule. They were serving meat that had gone green. They would leave food out overnight. The freezer once broke down for 3 days, and they kept serving from it, despite it being in the danger zone. He wore a hidden camera and gave the news the footage. It made me so glad I never ate there. My dad got food poisoning, salmonella, from a Golden Corral. He wound up hospitalized for 17 days, nearly died. He has an inflammatory bowel disease now and has to take weekly injections of Humira, which can itself cause some nasty health problems. I had long ago decided never to eat from buffets, but the whole situation with my dad reinforced the heck out of that decision. Also, screw you, Golden Corral. Story 11. This was at an all-you-can-eat Chinese place. A rather rotund customer arrived and wedged herself into a booth. Besides being a grade A wuss to begin with, she had the gall to request the waitstaff bring her food since she didn't want to get up from the table, and I guess, to funnel food into her arteries. I was bussing tables and watching from afar, so I didn't get directly involved. What ensued was utter karma for her being a crappy person to the staff and acting like she owned the place. When she was finished eating, she could not physically get up or get out of her booth due to her being so stuffed, large in general, and wedged in. I was told by her waiter that the look in her eyes when she had to deprecatingly ask for help was priceless. The manager eventually had to call the fire department to come and remove the table from the floor to get her out. All the while she continued complaining and was a terrible customer. Didn't leave a tip either because of poor service or something. I didn't care too much because it's a funny memory that gets me through the week to this day. I have removed a human from their booth at a pizza buffet under similar circumstances. I have been in the kitchens of pretty much every major restaurant, and the buffets are always bad. The only exception is a locally run Chinese one. The owner is my hero and runs a clean kitchen too. He 86s people constantly. We got called there with the PD when a customer faked a seizure after being kicked out. The owner was standing there saying, "Shaky, shaky, fat boy, you still pay." Story 12. I have a non-food related buffet story, not as a worker, but as a customer. I was a kid dining with the family after church, as per usual. Well, my dad goes to grab a plate from one of the plate warmers, and he suddenly throws the plate in the air, and it crashes onto the glass overhang over the food, shattering the glass all over the food. Apparently, the plate warmer had somehow busted and had superheated the plate. My dad got second-degree burns on his fingertips, but 6 of us ate for free, which was nice because we were pretty poor at the time. The restaurant was so worried about getting sued. They offered vouchers and things, but my dad was a really stand-up guy and basically said, "No worries, nobody's fault, it's all good." Also, once I saw a lady go to the salad bar and grab a bowl full of vanilla pudding. I watched her eat it all while I thought to myself that I too would love some pudding. I went to serve some, but up close, its texture was off. I tasted it a little bit. It was whipped butter. The lady ate a bowl full of butter. It was a little sweet, but clearly butter. Yuck. Story 13. Years ago, I was working as a server-spusser at an all-you-can-eat seafood buffet. One night, a guy and his wife came in and stayed for over 5 hours. The husband ate so much that the kitchen couldn't keep up. He was taking the entire warming tray from the buffet table to his table. A whole tray at a time of fried shrimp, then cod fillets, then crab legs, then fried oysters. You name it, he ate an entire tray. When closing time eventually came, the guy wouldn't leave. He just kept eating more and more. When we wouldn't bring out any more food, he began to panic, and twice he actually grabbed some of the plastic lobsters we used to decorate the buffet and tried to eat them. I and a few other employees actually had to physically remove him from the restaurant at that point. On top of all that weirdness, his poor wife did not eat a single thing that night, because apparently she didn't like fish, and literally everything in the restaurant had fish in it, even the bread. The guy ended up suing the restaurant owner for false advertising. Despite his inept legal counsel, he settled out of court with an agreement that he could eat as much as he wanted at any time, for free. All he had to do was eat it on display in the front window as a sort of advertisement freak show for the restaurant. Story 14. I worked at a buffet for about 4 years, and the buffet I worked at had a chocolate fountain, and half of my time on the clock was spent trying to keep customers from sticking their fingers and other non-food items into the fountain. I distinctly remember one woman with a cast on her arm who came up and started to dip some strawberries into the fountain. Next thing I know, she manages to stick most of her cast under the fountain so that the thing is basically coated with chocolate. Instead of trying to alert a staff member so the fountain could be closed down, sanitized, etc., she proceeded to casually walk back to her table and eat her dessert. I can even keep track of the number of times we had to close down the chocolate fountain to replace the chocolate that had been contaminated because some idiot thought it would be funny to stick their hand or face into it. This place was also the only establishment that I have ever worked at, where the carpets were professionally deep cleaned almost weekly because people would gorge themselves and then puke on the floors. We also had many customers who would basically poop on the walls of the stall rather than in the toilet, so the bathrooms were almost always a nightmare to clean. Many people paid other employees to clean up vomit and other bodily fluids if they didn't have the stomach for it. Story 15. I worked at Wendy's when they had salad bars. You could get a single-serving bowl or all-you-can-eat platters, the taco salad bottom plate. They used to serve eat-in chili in styrofoam bowls, and the large ones doubled as a chili bowl. On a slow afternoon, this individual came in and purchased a single-serving bowl. After a few minutes, our manager motioned to me and the sandwich guy to discreetly take a look at the salad he was making. The guy had filled the bowl with salad, then made a ring of overlapping cucumber slices to extend the lip of the bowl upwards. He filled that with salad, then added another ring. It took several minutes to build this thing, but by the time he'd finished, he had a tower of salad well over a foot tall, with multiple rings of cucumber slices containing it. That salad was an engineering marvel. He carefully carried it back to his table, sat down, and then looked up guiltily as our manager walked out to him. The manager handed him a free item coupon and said, "That is the most impressive salad I have ever seen. Your next one is on me." Story 16. At one point, I worked for a pizza place that used to have a day buffet that I would make pizzas for. One time, two huge dudes came in the moment we opened the buffet. The manager on duty dropped the first two pizzas down on the buffet, turned to grab the next two, turned back, and both pizzas were gone. A few minutes later, both dudes walk back up, each takes an entire pizza again, and walks back to continue eating. They proceeded to do this over and over, grabbing an entire pizza each for themselves for the entire 3 hours we were offering the buffet. It was one rough day to handle. Story 17. There was this man who used to come into our restaurant, who clearly wasn't all there in the head. He was functional, but very weird. As the months progressed, he got way weirder. He started wearing women's underwear over his clothes, even going so far as to stuff his bra. Picture a 6 feet 2 inches, 250 pounds, dude with a baby face wearing silky underpants, and a lace bra over ratty jeans, and a stained Hawaiian shirt. That's our guy. He went from being able to hold a sort of normal conversation to just spouting conspiracy theory word salad. But the weirdest thing was his change of eating habits. He used to eat a variety of our soup/salad/baked potato options from our buffet, but as his mental health deteriorated, so did his desire for variety, I guess. By the time his weirdness devolved to aggression, and we had to 86 him, he was coming in for two things: pickles and ranch dressing. The term 86, in this case, means we kicked him out permanently. He'd pile as many pickle slices as he could onto his plate, then put so much ranch on them that the dressing and pickle juice would be running all over the tray. He'd eat it all, and his face would be covered in ranch and pickle bits. Then he'd drink water straight from the pitcher he inevitably stole from the wait station, sliming it with pickle ranch slobber. Never a dull moment with that dude around. Pickle boy, wherever you are today, I really hope you got the help you so desperately needed, but I was not sorry to see you go. Story 18. I worked at a pizza buffet for 2 years during college. I will always remember the guy who got super upset that we wouldn't make more dessert pizza when we were half an hour past closing time. This guy comes in with his presumed wife and 2 children around 8:30. We close at 9. Nothing out of the ordinary happens until 9 rolls around, when it was still commonplace for people to be finishing up and eating what pizza was still left. I was doing the dishes and taking the empty dishes back from the buffet, and I saw this guy, arms crossed and staring at me as I took the empty dessert pizza dish. He says something to the effect of, "When's the next one coming out?" I never got any. I let him know that we close at 9 and we can't really make anything past then because the oven gets shut off. Luckily, the manager overheard this and stepped in to back me up, and I quickly scampered off to the back to continue the dishes. He seemed pissed, but it wasn't unheard of. As being a cheap pizza buffet, you don't exactly bring in the most affluent of folks. About 5 minutes later, as I'm finishing up the plates, the same manager comes barreling through the back door, out of breath. He grabs 2 of the long wooden pizza pushers and says, "Come with me." I have no idea what's going on, but I grab the pusher and follow him out the door. I learned later on that he started flipping out, throwing the register in a fishbowl. He grabbed a broom and swung that around, hitting the girl behind the counter. As I exit from the back, this guy is screaming and ranting unintelligibly. He was just asking for a fight. He walked up to the manager, got all up in his face, and kind of pushed him back. He came at me next, and I was really close to taking a swing at his knees or something, but the other manager had quickly gotten back up, and he resumed harassing him. After about 2 minutes of tiptoeing around a brawl and his wife presumably screaming for him to get back in the car, he eventually gets in, and they drive off. I won't forget the glossed-over look in his eyes as he came after me. It freaks me out to this day. Story 19. Not a worker, but I was at a Chinese buffet with a hot pot option that you had to pay extra for. There was a separate section with the stuff for that, which was raw. This guy loaded up his plate with all this raw stuff and was eating it, including dangerous raw stuff like shrimp. I think he may have been slightly intellectually disabled. The Chinese staff had to come over and inform him that he was eating the wrong things and try to explain it to him. He got really embarrassed and said that he did not understand how it worked. Between the Chinese staff with their limited English and this poor guy who was not capable of really understanding what he had done wrong, it was one of those awkward moments in life that you cannot forget, no matter how much you try. I had a roommate who was diagnosed with Asperger's and had lived with his mother till he was like 34. The dude wasn't really functional. He said his car was shaking when he got up to 50 miles per hour plus on the highway. I later noticed him pouring oil into his car. I asked him if he had ever changed the oil or if he just added it. I encouraged him to go to an oil change place and have them swap the oil. Lo and behold, his car stopped shaking when it got to 50 plus. Poor dude, I had to kick him out of the house after he was about $1,500 behind on rent to me. I think he's on government assistance now, thank God. Story 20. I served at Golden Corral for 6 months. And it was a god-awful place. You'd think it would be easy because you don't take orders, right? Wrong. Cleaning up the messes, bussing tables, getting drinks and clean plates, and singing for birthdays, plus side work, definitely kept you busy. Most of the customers weren't the greatest. They made an appalling mess, let their kids run wild, and didn't tip. We were paid $2.13 per hour. And needed tips, no matter how much you bent over backward for them. I saw so many unaccompanied kids reaching into the buffet serving dishes. I saw one kid dip his marshmallow into the chocolate fountain, lick the chocolate off, and put the same marshmallow back in over and over. The customers were normally very easy to deal with. Rudeness was the norm there. For example, people got into a physical fight over a table on Easter Sunday. The managers were jerks. They abused everyone. Both seemed to hate women, and took advantage of the fact that a lot of the staff were foreign. When we got a negative mystery shop report, we were all gathered into a meeting to be screamed at. When the next shop report was excellent, nothing at all was said. The report was just posted to the bulletin board. My one boss told me to be sure to report all my tips to the IRS, since he was sure I'd be a waitress all my life, and he wanted to make sure I'd get something from Social Security when I was old. Not that serving isn't a good job, but it made me so mad that I was 22 at the time, and this was his assumption. The managers carried the tea bags in their pockets. If your customer wanted a cup of tea, you had to track a boss down, and they would snarlingly begrudgingly hand one over. Servers were also expected to catch and confront people stealing from the buffet, like putting leftovers in their bags, for example. We weren't allowed to eat. Most cheaper restaurants will give you a meal per shift, but not GC. It was hard, when you saw how much was wasted, not to think you deserved a piece of bread or a broken cookie, maybe. To eat, you had to clock out, get in line, pay half price, get your plate, and then sit down. After 5 minutes, a manager would almost always come over and say, "We're busy, break's over," so you had to get back to work and throw your food away. I'm hypoglycemic, so my solution was to eat right before work and carry a granola bar in my pocket. I could eat the bar and get away with it in the women's bathroom because the managers were both men. One time, I was so stressed out and trying to scarf down my bar while in the next stall a very large woman took a very large and smelly dump. I realized that it was one of the worst moments in my life. I quit shortly thereafter, got a much better job, and called up GC's corporate office to tell them everything. Story 21. The family was gone, and I saw their dirty plates with napkins crumpled on top, so of course I cleaned them up and bussed the plates. 15 minutes later they came back and the mom started yelling at me in Spanish, so I got my coworker to translate. Basically, her daughter's retainers were in the napkins, and I had already thrown them away. She kept complaining about how they were more than $250, so I literally had to dig through a huge trash can full of a sludge of food and drinks for 15 minutes. But fortunately I found them, and the daughter thanked me, and she seemed embarrassed that her mom made me dig through the trash. Story 22. Not a buffet worker, but I was on holiday in the Caribbean, and at the hotel, there was an all-you-can-eat buffet. I had finished my dinner, and went up to the dessert station, where it had self-serve ice cream, and was in a queue behind 2 people. The person at the front was, by observation, a mid-30s Floridian woman. I myself was British, and so was the person directly in front of me. Anyway, she gets a bowl and takes the little ice cream scoop and freaking licks it. Then she scrunches up her face, goes to the chocolate flavor, and does the same thing again. At this point, I'm just like, nah, I'll pass. The person behind already left, and the one in front of me just muttered, "You freaking pig." She then turns to us with a confused expression and says, "What? There's water to wash it in anyway." So, that's how I lost my faith in humanity. Don't worry, I'd lost my faith in Floridians long before. Story 23. I'm not a worker. That being said, I was at a KFC in Bartonville, Illinois. They have a small buffet with the essentials of KFC fried chicken, mashed potatoes, gravy, biscuits, coleslaw, and a few other things I'm sure no one has ever touched. I've already sat down to eat, watching this older lady, about 60, walk up to the buffet. If you know anything about this area 309, you know the quality of people we are dealing with. This older lady walks up, grabs a piece of chicken in the very back part of the buffet, and without a bra, her right chesticle falls out. Now her shirt wasn't exactly what I would call age-appropriate, but her stuff was hanging out of the bottom. I cannot stop staring. She didn't wipe it off. I wasn't even sure if she knew what happened. Her right chesticle drags through the mashed potatoes. I have to investigate. I have to see what the damage was. There is a valley dug by this titty bits. I had to leave. Story 24. I was 13 or 14 and visiting some family in Modesto, California. One day my uncle and I were leaving the mall and he asked if I'm hungry. I say yes, and he says, "You want to go here?" while motioning to some Golden Corral type place that's built into the mall. I say, "Okay," because I'm a teenager. Bottomless pit. We walk around the stations, get our plates full and sit down to eat. We are eating for maybe 5 minutes when we both hear a loud commotion. Not sure what the sound is, we look up at each other and then around the dining area, both confused as to what we are hearing, where it is coming from, and then we both see it. Across the dining room, a morbidly obese man is sitting at a long table by himself. The alarming sound we were hearing was his loud, guttural retching. That's when I see the most violent spray of puke I've ever witnessed. There was so much, it must have been a solid 6 or 7 heavens, and he wasn't even slumped over. He was such a big person that as the vomit was spraying out of his mouth, only his head was jerking back and forth. He was trying to cover his mouth with his hand, but it looked like it had the same effect as when you hold your thumb over the end of a water hose. The spray easily covered his table, covered his plates, and then spilled over the edges onto the floor. Near the end of the heaves, there was less pressure, so it was just oozing out of his mouth and onto his chin, chest, belly, and thighs. He doesn't move. He sits in it. Some employees who didn't look like they were much older than I ran over and took inventory of the damage. They are asking him if he is okay. They are apologizing. They are taking his vomit-covered plates away. They are wiping the table off with wet rags. One of them brings a bucket and a mop over. He uses some of the rags to clean himself up. The people who were sitting near him had already gotten up and left in obvious disgust. My uncle and I cannot look away. The employees leave. He doesn't move. He sits there. I go back to eating my food because I'm a hungry teenager. A few minutes later, while I'm eating, my uncle gets my attention and motions for me to look back at the man's table. We both watch him stand up, grab his walker, walk back over to a station, and start to serve himself more food. He went back to his table, sat down, and continued to eat. I grabbed myself a soft serve cone on the way out. Story 25. When I was 16, I was a busboy at an all-you-can-eat buffet. This morbidly obese family came in after the noon hour, when it was slow, and were taking full advantage of the buffet. On my way to bussing tables, I walk by the bathrooms and see the teenage son walk out of the men's room with a huge grin on his round, prepubescent face. I immediately thought, this can't be good, and went to go check on the restroom, as one of our responsibilities was to make sure that the restrooms were generally clean. This guy had explosive diarrhea and had not even managed to hit the toilet. There was poop all over the toilet tank, the walls, and the floor, bar none. The most disgusting thing I have ever seen in a bathroom. I thought about cleaning it up, but instead I went to tell my manager. He was a pretty hard-driving guy, but he took one look at it, locked the stall, and told me, "Yeah, you don't get paid enough to clean this up. We'll get the janitor to take care of this tonight." Story 26. We have this huge buffet with a separate dessert buffet that is presented with fireworks and dry ice, and people walking around the restaurant with bells every weekend night. This one time, we had a hotel guest who kind of resembled Jabba the Hutt in size. She had a walker, and used it to sit on if she was tired of walking. Now, I usually assume these people just have a disease or disorder that causes them to not be able to lose any weight. This woman was different. She started with 4 eggs, munched down 2 plates of fries, ate 3 steaks and 6 pancakes, and downed 7 Cokes with that. I couldn't keep track of it all, but it was at least 8 plates of food. She then proceeded to wait for the dessert to be set up. It usually starts at 7, and we use the do not cross tape as a fun prop for the kiddos. She was there sitting on her walker at 6:45. Once the fireworks and ice were removed, she went all in. This woman was taking full cakes to her table, dipping everything in our chocolate fountain, and literally pushing kids out of her way to get to some sweets first. I saw her just grabbing stuff with her bare hands when we have these tong things for everything and putting her hands in the fountain. It made me physically sick to watch, man. Story 27. My first job in high school was at Sisis Pizza. We were constantly dealing with gross things, people sticking gum to tables, walking in swimsuits, dripping wet with no shoes on, and even just some of the practices were disgusting. There's a reason I will never eat grape tomatoes at a restaurant ever again. But the worst was this family that would come in at least once a week. They were all very obese except for the husband, who was super scrawny and looked perpetually exhausted. The woman was missing a bunch of teeth and wore 1970s-style glasses, and they all smell slightly like urine. She would ride in on her scooter and pay for her dinner with vouchers and then make request after request. They never ate off of the buffet, which means that every pizza they ordered was sent to their table directly, and every one was wrong. I legitimately have no idea whether the son was developmentally delayed or just socially awkward, but it felt like he and the mom worked as a team. One pizza would come out, they'd eat about 3/4 of it, and then realize something was wrong. No problem, we'll make another. No, they wanted something different. A zesty pepperoni with mushrooms. Oh, these mushrooms are canned. I wanted fresh also after eating 3/4, so there goes another order, only to be wrong. The whole time, the woman starts berating whoever is tasked with delivering the pizza or whoever she can wave over to their table because none of them get up. They even do this to get people to refill their drinks. As this is all going on, the son is getting more and more upset because his pizzas, which he still ate most of, are wrong and starts getting loud, gets up, starts pacing back and forth, etc. It eventually escalates to a point where we offer to remake it after 2 to 3 pizzas, and the woman is yelling about how we keep messing it up. Why would she want to come back here to eat? We just can't seem to get it right. Maybe it's that Mexican we have in the back making the pizzas. If he knew English, maybe he'd know how to do it right until the manager rushes out and gives them vouchers for a free meal on us, and they say, okay, well maybe we'll be back, but I just don't know. And then a week or maybe 2 weeks later, here they come rolling back in. I was so relieved when I left for college and I could kiss that job goodbye. Story 28. I work at a huge buffet in a resort. Pretty expensive, $45 per person, and we are only open 2 nights a week for dinner. Friday night is seafood, and it's almost always crazy busy. This particular incident happened maybe 4 years ago, so my memory is a tad bit hazy, but I remember all of the major details. Around 7 on this night, our busiest time, I kept hearing my coworkers talk about one table that was just choking down crab legs and being rude and disgusting, so of course I had to go down and see what they looked like. It was a family of 4, mother, father, and their 2 tweens. But taking a closer look, I realized that I recognized the mother and the father. They had actually come in 2 Fridays before this night, and I was the host who showed them to their table. At my restaurant there is a standard where we have to ask every guest if they want or need a tour of the food, because it's 3 rooms, and you know rich people can't be bothered with reading name cards for each dish. It can get really frustrating because people ask for the tour, and half the time they talk over you or just don't listen. So, I got their ticket, and I looked at the table number. It's one of the best tables in the restaurant because of the view. But it's behind a column and it's in the corner, so it's kind of hard to get to. And also, it's a little far from the buffet because it's close to the front of the restaurant. I take one look at these people and immediately start dreading the process of actually seating them because they are both very, very large. I ask if they want me to give them a verbal tour of the buffet because, once again, the table is in the front corner and hard to get to, and that would just make them feel like they were having to walk a mile to get to their table if I were to take them all the way through the buffet and explain it. So I was just planning on pointing and explaining each room. Anyway, I ask, and he says, "No, take us through." Exactly like that. Bad start. So, of course I say okay, and start walking. Throughout the whole tour, he is barely paying attention, and as soon as I get through explaining one station after another, he tells me to walk them over there and explain it again because he was too busy looking at something else. So, we finally get into the last room, and he asks where the hot crab legs are. I point at the chafer, and he immediately goes over with his wife, lifts the lid, and starts whispering to her, and I notice that there are only a few clusters left, but of course, I know that they are going to refill it. So, I finally finish this tour, and I'm walking back through to take them to their table. Without a word, he veers off and starts walking past the host stand and towards the door. His wife, who was foreign and actually pretty nice to me, politely asked me where the restroom was and said they would be right back, but I knew better and did not see them again until this night 2 weeks later. The guy is disgusting. He has a napkin tucked into his shirt like a bib, but still somehow managed to get drawn butter spilled down the front of him. He kept flagging down his server by yelling, "Waitress, waitress," and then he would say like, "Get me more Diet Coke" or "Get me more butter." So then he asks for a chef to come out to the table, and our poor sous chef is the unlucky one to go. The guy wants, I think, 7 pounds of crab legs to be brought to his table in one of those big wooden sharing salad bowls. The chef tells him that we don't have those, that we do have a chafer. He says, "That would please me greatly." So the chef brings out this giant chafer probably 1 foot wide and 2 feet long filled with crab legs to this guy. He and his family eat the whole thing. At the end of their meal, they ask to speak to our manager. The husband says his wife cut her lip on her coffee cup. It was a smooth chip. They found a hair in the soup, and the chef embarrassed them by bringing the giant chafing dish of crab legs to the table, and he expected him to come out and apologize. So he got all 4 meals comped, got his apology from our chef, and then left the server nothing. I think when all was said and done, they ate around 13 or 14 pounds of crab between the 4 of them. I realized at that point that they were total scam artists and had come those 2 weeks earlier to scope out the crab legs, but their being almost empty at that time must have been a red flag, which is why they left. When they left, our other manager pulled up their reservation notes that would pop up for any possible future visits and wrote, "Be aware, Crabman, alert manager." The Crabman has still not returned. Story 29. I was a cook for a grocery co-op. We had a breakfast and lunch buffet every day. We had one regular who would come in, take a bowl, put his breakfast food, potatoes, eggs, and biscuits in it, and cover it with a thin layer of grits. The bowls were for grits and oatmeal at a set price. Regular food went in a box and was priced by weight. After a few days of watching him do this, I confronted him at the register and told the cashier to weigh his cup and charge him for that. He was not very stoked, but he had realized he had been found out. The very next morning he came in and made a beeline for the coffee, and he grabbed a box. I thought I had struck a chord with him, and he learned a lesson. Nope, he dumps his whole cup of coffee in the fresh-off-the-grill pan of scrambled eggs. Somehow he convinced the store manager that it was just an accident. About a week goes by before he makes his return. I see him grab a 12-ounce cup and start squeezing honey into it like it was cool. I walked right over and grabbed that cup out of his hand and walked it into my manager's office and told him to see who had done it. He was subsequently banned from the store, trespassed by the police, and had his co-op ownership fees returned. He ran into me and my girlfriend at a local restaurant on the 4th of July. As he was walking in, I looked up, and we made eye contact, and I kind of loudly said, "Yo, that's the frigging jerk with the coffee." He turned around, got in his car, and left. Screw that guy, and that job. Story 30. I was a customer, not a worker. My wife and I went to a Sweet Tomatoes for a lunch date. Unlimited salad and soup were always good. One time, I saw a man over by the soup take the serving ladle for one of the weekly specials and take a big slurp from it. Then apparently he didn't like it, and spat it back out into the ladle and put the ladle back in the soup. What the heck, dude? I got up immediately and told the nearest staff what I'd seen, and they got right on getting that nearly full pot of soup out of there. I didn't have any more soup on that visit. The what-ifs were too damn strong, which is a shame because I love their chunky chicken noodles. Story 31. I wasn't an employee, but I witnessed a marvelous thing. I was sitting in a small-town Chinese buffet. 3 big dudes, not obese but farm-built big, come in. These guys proceed to just clean the house. Plate after plate after plate. They weren't wasteful. They ate everything they took. They were very polite to the staff and other customers. But I bet each man ate a dozen plates, each stacked high. The cooks were working to keep up. My family and I found ourselves watching this marvelous feat of eating unfold in awe. When they approached the counter to pay, after all this eating had unfolded in only 45 minutes or so, the manager greeted them at the counter. In his broken English, he simply said, "You men, you no pay, but you no come back." The guys gave each other and the manager a "yeah, fair enough" look and left. Story 32. I was just a witness, but I saw how a woman came in with about 5 kids, and she made them all sit at a table while she got food, even if they seemed old enough to get it themselves. She just grabbed 2 trays, placed 3 plates on both of them, and literally poured all the chicken nuggets on 1 plate so it was a huge mountain. She did the same to 5 other dishes and left 5 pans that were full or almost full before she came empty. Needless to say, people were pissed, especially when she did it multiple times again with other dishes and would often glare at people if she saw them taking food from dishes she probably wanted. Story 33. I bus at a slightly nicer restaurant. On Fridays and Sundays, we offer a prime rib and crab leg buffet, along with a salad bar, hot and cold entrees, and a dessert bar. It's honestly pretty nice, and our buffet runner keeps anyone from doing ungodly things to the buffet. But the one incident that will always stand out to me was when this family of 5 came in. From the moment they came in to the moment they left, they ate as many crab legs as they possibly could. Their server and I were clearing plates off as fast as we could. But every time we would return, it seemed like another mountain of crab leg shells would appear in front of each member of that family. I don't know how they ate so much, and I honestly can't recall if they ate anything besides the crab. Piles upon piles of shells were left on the table after they left. It was truly a sight to behold. What's more, after I wiped down the table and came back with settings, I had to get another rag to wipe down the table again because something in the crab leg juice combined with our sanitizer and left a nice milky residue on the table. Delicious. When I leave this job, I'll never be able to look at crab legs the same way. Story 34. I worked at a Shoney's in high school, and we had a breakfast buffet every day, and a seafood buffet on Friday nights. You'd see stuff dropped in the wrong containers, cheese sauce splattered everywhere, and people tasting things off the bar instead of at their seats. The leftover Friday fish fillets became fish chowder the next morning. The leftover chowder from Friday also became chowder the next day. My understanding is that you are not allowed to save cream-based soups and foods from one day to the next. We would serve that stuff all weekend. We also often had nasty, slippery shrimp we would bread and serve. I handled so much shrimp daily there that I smelled like dead fish nearly all the time, even after showering. Story 35. Not a worker, but I was in China for a vacation at a new buffet. I made the mistake of going on week 1 of the opening as my relatives were dying to go. There was a lobster station that served fresh steamed lobster. Anytime a new tray came out, people would swarm it. Before they made a rule about how many you can have, people just grabbed as many as they could. This one table had about 24 lobsters on their table for about 6 people. Some guy at the table would constantly bring back more and more, and eventually people got pissed because it was just sitting there not being eaten, at least not yet. So, a few people got in the group's face and started taking their lobsters. Within 3 minutes, a full-on fight breaks out. People are swinging hard, and lobsters are flying all over the place. Story 36. I once worked in a bar where they catered events in a number of ways, one of which was an all-you-can-eat buffet. During one of my shifts, a christening reception was in full swing. We already had knowledge that some of the guests would be late, so we were told to progress the food to the buffet tables, slowly. We put out several sausage roll platters, sandwich trays, and cake plates. Finger food for those already there. The event started at 12 o'clock, At 2 p.m., in walked who I am going to call Mr. Creosote and Creosote Jr. The wife-mother was already there, and from outward appearances, Mr. and Jr. didn't look like the sort that had barrels for stomachs. By then, the event room was packed, so we began putting out more of the hot food and platters. I was working drinks from the bar, and so had a good view of both the event room and the main bar room. While cleaning glasses, I see Creosote's Mr. and Jr. piling their plates. Pizza slices, cream buns, cheese and onion sandwiches, spines from the pineapple hedgehog, all of it in a heap on a cardboard plate. Then they disappeared. This happened several times. For at least half the time I saw them, they both had a plate each. Then I look up and they're sharing a plate. Finally, only Creosote Jr. is walking back from the tables. Now, Creosote Jr. wasn't the only kid there, but he was the oldest. For a while, 2 5-year-old boys were running through the bar and into the beer garden and back. As they're running through, the boy in front is running, shaking his arms above his head in a frenzy as he runs. Meanwhile, Creosote Jr. is now slowly creeping his way up the table, a far cry from his happy strides from earlier. He's just finished piling his next plate of food when it happens. In running the 5-year-olds, who make a beeline for the tables, Creosote Jr. is slightly away from the table. Boy 1, arms swinging, flies around Creosote Jr., and as he does so, slams a fist the size of a cricket ball into Creosote Jr.'s crotch. It all happened slowly. The boys ran out of the room unaware, and the leaning tower of pizza and cheese of Creosote's plate toppled over as his hands moved to his crotch. He drops to his knees. Mrs. Creosote comes over to him, checking if he's okay as he screams in agony. Creosote Jr. gets this look on his face. He quickly gets up, hands over his mouth, and runs for the main bar room. Stumbling, he hits the bar, and a loud burp erupts from him. Yet his hand still holds his mouth tight. He can't see the sign for the bathroom. He rushes back to the bar, and I, sensing it's nearly geyser time, point to the far corner of the room. Too late. A torrent of pineapple chunks, melted cheese, various colored liquids, and bread pieces comes flying out of his mouth, splashing across the bar. The patrons at the bar scattered. I jumped back. It went everywhere. He drops to the floor, a mixture of tears and vomit stains. His mother rushes out. I rush out with a towel, and I help him get up before they both go to the bathroom. We had to open the other end of the bar while we cleaned up the vomit. I don't work there anymore, but the smell is still there almost a year later. Story 37. My first job was tending the buffet at a Shoney's. I mainly worked nights because I was 16. Friday to Sunday we had a late-night breakfast buffet. Friday and Saturday we were open until 3 a.m., well past last call. Anyway, at the time there was also a gigantic Pentecostal revival, the Brownsville Revival, going on. More than 4 million people from all over the world showed up over the course of the years it went on. It had started in 1995, so it was in full swing in 1996, when I was at Shoney's. Church would go on until past midnight on weekend nights. Buses of these holy rolling fundamentalist wackados would roll up less than an hour before we closed and wreak havoc. If we had a drunk bar rush and some Brownsville buses, we'd easily be there cleaning until the morning crew showed up at around 5. These jerks were so damn rude. You'd think people who had been at a euphoric church meeting for hours would be in a decent mood, but nope, they were crappy. They'd yell at us the second the buffet ran low or something. They'd tip servers with Chick tracts instead of actual money, and this was the most insane thing. They'd actually fall out and get the spirit in the middle of the restaurant. Yep, flailing around on the floor while loudly laughing, crying, or speaking in tongues. We weren't even the closest Shoney's. That one would get like 5 buses for every 2 we got. The whole affair was freaking insane. Thank you for watching. If you enjoyed this video, be sure to give it a thumbs up, subscribe, and hit the bell icon so you never miss an update.